about 1.2 or 3 going on. What difference is it going to make?
On the one hand, you say, why are you taking away mansion tax for something else? On the other hand, you say, well, make a difference. Let me
well, no, it's just, when you talk about the other parties, they have pledged £8 billion, haven't they, more? You haven't done that for the health service.
The mansion tax plus a levy on tobacco companies plus closing the loopholes on hedge funds will make sure the Time to Care fund is met. And as far as what the other parties have done, look, I can make uncosted, unfunded promises now 11 days before the election, but frankly they'd be unbelievable. And what we're trying to do as a political party is something quite novel, which is to under-promise and hopefully over-deliver.
But what about it when all the other potential putative mayoral candidates, and I know you're not declared, but you could well be interested yourself, they all say that mansion tax is a tax on London, they don't like the look of it, don't like the feel of it, very hard to sell on the doorstep. But you're not saying that.
Well, I mean, it's for people who are saying that to defend themselves. What I'm saying very clearly is I'm very proud of being a Brit. I'm very proud as a country that we pool our resources. I believe in the principle of those with the broader shoulders.
What are they being? Are they being slightly opportunistic by taking this opportunity, being very focused on?
I'm not going to talk about the other people.
Really?
Other people who may say what they want to say.
Well, they might be getting political advantage ahead of you by using the mansion tax in this way.
There's a really important election in 11 days' time. It's a general election. London is best served by a Labour government. All my efforts are spent trying to get as many Labour candidates returned, not just in London, but around the country as well, because, we're best served by a Labour government. All our energy should be focused towards
And is it kind of accepted that it potentially could be just the price that will be paid in some seats? You may not gain ones that you might have done otherwise, or you may lose some, because the mansion tax may just worry people. But you accept that because, as Jim Murphy says, or elsewhere in the north of England, you may get more benefits there for the money you're putting into the health service, so you pay the price. I just
don't accept that premise. I'm knocking on doors every day.
A win-win for Scotland must be a lose-lose for London, mustn't it?
I'm knocking on doors every day, not just in Tooting, but around London and around the country. And in London, people are really angry about what's happened to the NHS in the last 5 years. They're really angry about promises made but broken. And they want a party who's going to save and transform the National Health Service. They also want politicians to tell the truth. Service. So we're going to explain how we're going to save and transform the NHS.
Health Service. You mentioned the Health Service. Let's move on briefly. Championing the NHS is a big issue for Labour, and saving A&E departments from closure is what they say they'll do. Here's Chris Ham again.
A&E closures are politically toxic, particularly during an election campaign, so it's no surprise that all the parties have been silent on that. Whether they stick to those commitments after the election when the going gets tough and when there's serious discussion about how to improve care, perhaps by concentrating some specialist services in fewer hospitals, we'll have to see. I wouldn't place any money at all on there being no further changes to A&E services in the capital.
So, Sadiq Khan, will you be straight enough to kind of say, look, as finances continue to be bad, etc., if there is a case made to us, and there was a case being made to Labour not many years ago, which Labour accepted, if some A&Es should close, there's no sense in having them, we need super hospitals with... would you go along with that this time?
So let me explain the dilemma we have in London. We have a rising population, and it's 8.6 million now, and it's only going in one direction, going upwards. So the idea of closing things down doesn't make sense at this stage. What are we going to do? We're going to try and change the way the NHS works going forward. So we're going to integrate physical, mental and social far better than it happens now. We have a problem every winter. It's a horrible phrase called bed blocking, where hospitals do a great job getting people better, older people, but they can't be released from hospital because of issues around social care, which leads to more expense in hospital, people not being treated, simply being housed. How we're going to solve that is integrate physical, mental and social. The other thing we're going to do is abolish, repeal the Health and Social Care Act.
So and if those things go to plan and you start seeing the rationalisations for it, will you say that it's possible that some A&Es may have to close as part of that? If you go well, you sort the social care out, you'll be able to.
What I'm trying to explain is that we've got to change
haven't got too long, so just...
We've got to change the way we provide health in this country. Prevent is much more important now than it was in the past. So, for example, addressing obesity problems, for example, providing care in the community.
And if a lot of this is going to plan, could you see a position where we obviously just wouldn't need as many A&Es, though? So, of course, down the line, we could close them, couldn't we? Because we're doing a lot more preventative.
Let's wait and see what happens. But at a time when you've got a rising population and it's going in one direction, at a time when people are having to wait a long time to see their GPs, it's hardly surprising you've got an A&E crisis. So what we're trying to do is make sure we've got a plan going forward. That's a long-term plan rather than a Band-Aid over a current problem.
Let's use the time we've got left to kind of address this issue about, Labour and the city, or Labour and wealth creation, and, getting rid of non-doms, the banker's bonus tax. We've seen the mansion tax and so on. This is going to stifle wealth creation here, isn't it?
No, it's not. We are not anti-business, but what we are is anti-business as usual. Look, the wealth created in the City of London, in London, helps to pay for so many things. What we're trying to do is make sure that those who do well pay a fair amount. So we're going to close down loopholes that currently exist, and we're going to make sure people pay their fair dues. Look, people who have been born and raised in this country very often, people who have lived here nearly all their lives, shouldn't be avoiding paying tax by using non-dom status.
But you know, as of January, the Shadow Chancellor Ed Balls wasn't convinced about this. Said it in a radio interview, didn't he? He said, you know, we're worried about this. We wouldn't do it because it would scare people off. We've seen an accountant in the film saying that. I'm
sure you didn't rely upon the edited clip released by the Conservative Party, but saw the full answer Ed Balls gave, which was, you know, he's going to look at the options in relation to the non-dom status. And why is it right that these people who very often are in lots of money in this country are using a loophole simply by, for example, subscribing to a newspaper overseas? Why aren't they paying their fair amounts? Many of them themselves went to state schools and their children too.
You couldn't find any examples. No one could find any examples of that, could they, just on that subscription story?
Why aren't they paying their fair dues? You and I both pay as you earn. Why aren't they?
Well, you know that, of course, they do pay and bring huge amounts of wealth here as well, and many of them you are asking them to pay tax and in their other nationalities and countries as well as here. But we know there are an awful lot of people, we've seen the studies, they are bringing huge amounts of wealth to this city, aren't they?
To give Boris Johnson his dues, he paid the tax he was due. The USA demanded him to pay because and the USA, even the USA, the most capitalist country in the world, makes sure that people who are earning an income overseas pay their tax. What I'm saying to you is, look, if you are in this country essentially for most of your time, you've got to pay your taxes wherever your income is.
But the key thing from the point of view, with all these things, the theme of what we've been talking about today,
is fairness. The theme is fairness.
You really think
fairness?
You think people are going to be coming over to you and voting for you if they perceive and think that you are the direction of travel here is damaging wealth creation?
In London, we have more billionaires than millionaires than ever before, and I'm really proud of that. 84 billionaires, 400,000 millionaires, right? A third of Londoners live in poverty. 2/3 of those are in work. That is an outrage. A Labour government's going to address that. I think it's a badge of shame that 1 million people around the country used a food bank last year, 100,000 in London. When I speak to Londoners going door to door, street to street, community to community, they're angry and they want politicians to provide a solution to those problems.
While we have you here, a big story this week, of course. Lutfur Rahman, the independent mayor in Tower Hamlets, banned, corrupt electorally and so on. Have the police got questions to answer here? Would you want them to start to look again at whole areas about what may have been happening here?
I think there's two main questions for the police. Why is up until now they've decided not to take any actions against some of the reports that were made to them? Secondly, are they going to now look into some of the issues raised by the judgment the other day? The one point I want to say is this, though, Tim. 5 years ago, when the Labour Party took a decision to expel Lutfur Rahman from the Labour Party, we were criticised.
Yeah, apparently you were having discussions recently. He said during his court hearing
5 years on
that you were having discussions about getting him back in.
Well, I've never had any conversation with Lutfur.
Not you personally.
I spent 2 days in the count at Tower Hamlets.
But he was an electoral winner. He was gold dust that you couldn't provide out there in Tower Hamlets.
I think Tim, both you and I know that the Labour Party has been vindicated, and as importantly, John Biggs, who's a friend of mine who I've campaigned side by side with in the elections last May, has been vindicated, and that's really important for us. We want to move forward now. In the meantime, the people of Tower Hamlets have been let down. They need a good mayor and a Labour mayor.
All right, Sadiq Khan, thanks very much indeed.